so let's talk about just kind of that specific subset of water as a recreation resource, specifically the frozen stuff. So it's going to be snow, it's going to be ice, it's going to be glaciers, which is flowing ice. And these things are awesome. They're also going away. Got to catch them all while you can. I don't know if glacier is a type of Pokemon, but it should be. Anyway, we want to think very specifically about how your national park may have a fraction of its water resources in the cryo compartment. That is, do you have any alpine ridges where it is essentially below freezing year-round or very close to? On summer camp this year, we saw Tuckerman Ravine and a couple other ravines in the White Mountains National Forest that get up to tree line and have snow right through June and July, and people are snowboarding there in June and July, kind of just for the novelty of it. There aren't a lot of other high enough mountains that are steep enough to do that in the northern New England states. There's certainly plenty out in Colorado and Wyoming and all that stuff with the Rockies. But just the novelty of it being at lower elevation and real close to major population centers means we have people snowboarding in June at 6,000 feet or 5,500 feet. And it's a lot of fun. Some of these videos that I'm going to, or short video clips that we're going to look at here, are super dangerous and involve highly skilled people. So I can't recommend that you do these things, but if you die trying, it's going to be sick. No, that's gallows humor. We don't want to devolve into that. All right, so this is glacier ice. Yes, it really does get that blue as a function of the freezing process and how light percolates through water and trapped gases. Very cool stuff. And this is also glacier ice. This is with sunlight through it. Right? So water, when it freezes very slowly, takes on that very clear appearance. If you've ever been to a high-end bar and they have those fancy spherical, like glassy looking ice cubes, this is what's going on, but this is natural and much bigger and cooler. No pun intended. So there's a huge tourism industry around getting us drylanders close to spots like this. You know, Titanic notwithstanding, there's a lot of cruise ship action to places like this. The irony here is that cruise ships are extremely dense sources of pollution. So a 5,000 person, Carnival cruise ship or Disney cruise lines or whatever, for 5,000 people, it's putting out the carbon and particulate equivalent of 5 million cars. So that's a lot. And that's 1,000 vehicles worth of pollution per recreationist. And that pollution, in the form of particulate, settles on these glaciers, and the soot, kind of that ashy particulate stuff coming out of the fluid matrix of the atmosphere and settling down, makes the surface of the ice darker, and so it melts much faster. We saw this at a global scale several years ago when there were just out-of-control wildfires across Siberia and Alaska and so forth, and that smoke plume went almost all the way around the world at those latitudes and just covered basically the entire Arctic Circle in soot and ash that year. And we saw just absolutely crazy amounts of extra ice getting melted into water to the tune of cubic miles of seawater at a time. So in our efforts to get people to these spots to enjoy sea kayaking in and among calving glaciers and so forth, we are accelerating the process and intensifying it. And we need to be honest about that. So snow is beautiful, so there's the aesthetic value as well, just like with all those beautiful waterfalls and so forth that we saw earlier. And very particular forms of specialized or advanced recreation like ice climbing are highly resource dependent. So we can have hiking trails anywhere for kind of anybody, but for the folks who want to do stuff like this, they have a pretty prescribed, that is, a short, limited, and fixed list of places where the topography, the water, and climate all combine, or latitude maybe, all combine to give you ice columns on which to climb. So that is a very specific form of forest and outdoor recreation that we need to, wrestle with. And I only include video clips like this because the recreation program some years ago sent a trip of students out to Colorado kind of for their equivalent version of summer camp, their adventure leadership class. And they went to, I believe it was Rocky Mountain National Park, to go ice climbing up on some of the high peaks of the 14ers up there, like Long's Peak, for example, has a bunch of ice climbing. And they didn't even get all the way up to the climbs, if I recall correctly. One of the students developed acute mountain sickness and had to be medically exfiltrated at high speed. So in seeking to even get to the theater of operations, so to speak, for this kind of forest and outdoor recreation, we have some real health risks in addition to like the on-site activity risk. So here's a shaky cam video of playing around in the, this is the decomposed melting snow. We would call this sun cup snow, where each footprint is sort of cupped out in the snow and freezes overnight, and then sun rises, melts water in this little cup of ice, right? Sun cups kind of suck to walk in, but it's kind of a fact of life in spots like this. Lots of fun, pretty slippery. I foresee nothing going wrong in these situations, right? No big deal. And here's more of that clear water, in this case, clear ice. As a resource, this is a very specific and particular vibe or mood, right? And portfolio of safety risks. So sometimes you have people traveling to places to see and experience and recreate a hike like this, but without necessarily having grown up in an environment like this and understanding the dynamics of how to understand what cracking ice sounds like, how to understand the depth of very clear ice and what is thick enough for me versus what is thick enough for my car versus what is thick enough for my ice fishing shack out on the water, and so forth. And all of these things, all of these dynamics are changing as the planet heats up, right? This year is the first year in which global average annual temperature anomaly, global warming, at its most basic metric, 2024 is the first year in which we're going to hit 1.5 degrees Celsius, which is like the line in the sand that IPCC and everybody else, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, everybody else has said that if we get above and stay above 1.5 degrees C, that we are hitting for the first time this year, that's when we face existential threats to humanity, period. Right? So what that means for forest and outdoor recreation management is somebody who's coming to this place year after year after year to hike on this frozen pond, well, maybe they're aware, maybe they're not, of how much longer the growing season is in this place, how much later this ice thickens up to its safe point, and how much earlier it starts to melt down below that critical safety threshold. Okay? So, unfortunately, climate change is what gets a lot of our most passionate, most experienced, but not necessarily most skilled recreationists by surprise, where I've been doing this for 70 years and the ice has never been this thin at this time of year, right? So it's very unfortunate, and we need to work very carefully and educate and inform people very, very intentionally. Otherwise, something like this slips through the cracks, pun intended. Okay. So, travel over ice fields is difficult, and this is, like Carlsbad Caverns, one of those spots where you really, really, really want to have expeditions that are fully kitted out, fully permitted, and that everybody knows exactly what the plan is on the agency side, on the user group side, everybody is fully informed so that when search and rescue has to happen out of an ice crevasse, of which there are probably thousands in this field here, you can mount any kind of effort. And you have a very good understanding, hopefully, as the ranger, of all of the procedures and skills and equipment that that expedition has for self-rescue. Okay? So, also true on the water. It's kind of hard to see, but there's some kayakers real close to that. Wouldn't want to be that guy. Anyway, snow dynamics, aesthetic. Now, from an ecological protection perspective, thick snow is as good as it gets. If you have people hiking, skiing, snowboarding, telemark, cross-country skiing over snow that's 5-6 feet thick, they are completely ecologically invisible to the soil, the vegetation, and the wildlife, all surviving just fine, thank you very much, and adapted to survive under that all winter long. But to the extent that very, very intensive skiing, for example, compacts the snow down to the point that those wildlife species, typically small overland and underland rodents, are creating tunnels to connect up parts of their winter habitat across this trail. The snow machines can compact those trails away and cut off whatever it is from its food supply stored on the other side of the trail, and then local collapse by starvation. Not a great way to go. So we're really in favor of snow. There's nothing wrong with running lots and lots of even intensive recreation over very thick snow. So the goal here is to get people to find that balancing act between let's get our outdoor recreationists or snowboarders and skiers, alpine skiers, to the thickest snow that we can. Unfortunately, that often means higher up the slope, and higher up the slope typically means steeper slope and more things like avalanche risk. So we're trying to balance these things together. An avalanche is a third form of fluid flow. So avalanches are aerosols. They are solid snow particles, so dry snow particles, in a liquid or fluid matrix of air. And aerosols flow like fluids do. And so there's a really cool set of studies, really kind of cool and depressing studies that figured out avalanches can break, was it like 180 miles an hour? Because the outside of the avalanche sort of encounters the air at the head wall of the avalanche, the front of the avalanche, and slows down and moves that air out of the way as it sort of punches its way through. And then the avalanche material behind that, as the avalanche is sort of peeling itself, that material behind it actually gets sucked into the space that is voided by the head wall of the avalanche. And so it's pulling itself down the slope faster and faster and faster. So where we have folks wanting to do some extreme and high angle recreation, that's very understandable, but we just can't cheat physics, right? And so we get into a situation where one or a few people, for the sake of a really sick helicopter mounted or drone mounted video edit like this, put a lot of other people at risk downslope. So this ends up being a permitting and enforcement issue as much as anything else. This is never not going to be appealing to a certain sector of humanity, so we just got to work with that or work around it. Okay? Snow or cryo resources are very, very, very dependent on topography. So hill-facing aspect, right? There's a reason that the ski equipment and clothing company is called North Face, right? In the northern hemisphere, the north face gets the least sunlight. The south face is typically hotter, drier, more exposed, and not all of your recreationists will understand that topographic and ecological dynamic, and so sometimes there's a kind of a low-key education effort to help people understand, hey, if you want to go for a hike, maybe use this trail in this season because it's sunnier, it's drier, it's going to be a lot more pleasant. But oh, you want to get up into the snow? All right, well, go on the other side of the same mountain. This other trail is pretty gnarly right now, but you'll be up in the snow for sure. Okay, so it's not wrong to want one or the other. It is definitely an issue of helping folks understand basic ecological and topographic dynamics like that. Things are melting rapidly. And so just the other day I saw a really cool video of somebody kayaking down one of these. You might have seen videos like this on social media. It is super fun to shoot that chute, right? SHOOT, that CHUTE, and so forth, but that is a limited engagement opportunity and very ephemeral. Yeah, things are heating up. Cool. All right, so that's our sermon on cryo stuff. Let's jump into more of the impact dynamics.